everyone, it's Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm. And if you're new to my channel, I focus on flower farming videos, focusing on the business side of things. Now, we are going to do this video backwards, similar to the last one. So I actually shot some footage from a few days ago. That's gonna be right after this section here. And I'm just gonna say, stay with me, because sometimes when I film these videos, I have a certain objective that I think I'm going to achieve with the video, and it turns out to be something completely different. So this video is ultimately about how I moved 55 bouquets through Facebook Marketplace. So basically local marketing strategy, and I'm gonna get there. So it's about 5 minutes into the video, I get into the meat of logistics, financials, and how I did it in terms of specifics. So stay with me. Hey guys, how's it going? It is Wednesday today, and it's been so hot here. For New Jersey, it's been really hot. We have this heat wave, which I think a lot of the US is experiencing right now. And it's gonna be so hot for my market on Sunday. It's gonna be over 100 degrees Fahrenheit that they basically canceled the market already. So in some ways I'm kind of relieved, because you know the market's going to be a bust when it's over 100 degrees. Even when it's over like 85 degrees, there is significantly less traffic. So, you know, I think it was a good call on their end. The flowers probably would have started wilting, but my candles probably would have started melting, as well as, you know, my soap would have been sweating. So I'm really glad that they canceled it. The last thing I want to do is to spend my Sunday sweating my butt off and not selling anything. So that being said, there are still a lot of stems that I have. I have quite a bit of sunflowers, not as much as last time, but I have quite a bit of sunflowers. I have some other stuff, including zinnias, gomphrenias coming. I have basil that's ready for filler, status, some dill, and just some other like straw flower stuff. So I got to move those stems. And the main question is, what am I going to do? So stay tuned, because I have a couple of plans, and I'm already getting so much interest from one that I may not go with plan B. So we're going to talk about what those two plans are and what I'm doing for the next couple of days to prepare for it and make sure that I can move those stems. Hey guys, it is Thursday. So about a full 24 hours after I made my last video, and I'm exhausted. I sold 17 bouquets today. So yesterday I mentioned that I was gonna try to basically move the stems in two different ways. So my original plan was time to call up some florists, time to make my line sheet. I didn't even get past brainstorming what that line sheet would look like, because I ended up posting the flowers in a local Facebook group. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that in detail, show you some photos of what that looks like. But literally my phone started blowing up. I mean, I woke up at 5:45 today to harvest some more stems. I had a lot of stems. I mean, I had at least enough for like 20 bouquets, and I quickly realized that that was not going to work in terms of me running out. And, you know, if you have demand, go get it. Right? Like, don't let yourself get constrained by not having enough stems. So I called my lifesaver, Jess, the local grower. She provided me with a bunch of stems. And I was joking with her. I was like, I think I might have to come back again over the weekend. So tomorrow I actually have a string of deliveries as well as some pickups. And I'm actually a little bit nervous as to whether or not I'm actually gonna have enough stems for that. But right now I wanna show you what the bouquets look like. So you can see that these are very festive summer colors. Jess really spoiled me. I asked for zinnias, and you know, she always gives extras, so she gave dahlias. I can't even with these dahlias right now, but that's not why I'm showing you this. I'm showing you this because in addition to what I normally do, I made these little tags. So it's just very simple. It has my social media, it has the website, and it says that this is plantable because it's actually seed paper. But the reason why I did this was because I wanted to make sure that people knew that they can go to my website and that I would have a subscription service later. So lots to do for the next I would say few hours. I'm going to be making a bunch of bouquets. I still have a couple more pickups later today, but I also want to talk about some other stuff that I did in addition to posting on Facebook. This kind of forced me to get my act together in terms of just setting myself up for a recurring type of customer base versus relying on the market. So we'll pick up when the frenzy is over, but I did want to show you what the bouquets look like. All right, so it is Saturday. We've cleared 46 bouquets and I project we're gonna clear 55 bouquets. So I thought about what I really wanna talk about in this video, and it's really two main things. A lot of people have been asking me two main things on Instagram. So before all of this started, people were asking what are some tips for local marketing, especially on social media. So I'm going to talk about that specifically through Facebook. But then the other thing I do want to talk about is my experience doing this and why, even though it was such a quote unquote success, I'm probably not going to be doing it often. And then of course, we're going to talk about the financials, how much money I made in terms of revenue based on how many bouquets I sold, minus all of the cost line items. So let's dig in. Let's talk about what I did. So on Wednesday, as I mentioned, I got a text from the market manager saying that they were going to cancel Sunday's market. That's tomorrow. Today it's already going to be 100 degrees. Tomorrow it's also going to be 100 degrees. And look, no one's going to show up at the market. The flowers aren't going to be super happy being there for like 4 hours. So I thought it was a great, responsible decision. So that literally, I got out of work, and as I was getting into my car, I was already creating a post on Facebook Marketplace to see if there would be any interest in my stems. Now, to be completely honest, I expected very little interest, like maybe a couple of people. And I had at least about, I would say 60 sunflowers sitting in the refrigerator that were going to be opening by Friday. Some of them were already starting to open. I had, as I mentioned earlier, a bunch of flowers out in the field, right? So I had bouquets to make. I would estimate that if I really, wanted to maximize my bouquet making, I probably had enough for like 15 to 16. So, and that's because, I don't have a ton of filler. If I had a ton of filler, maybe I could have stretched that to 20. That's besides the point of this video. So I put it on, and the main thing that I did was, instead of just posting it to Marketplace, I posted it in some community Facebook groups. And when we were clearing our field and we had a ton of sod, I posted it to a couple of community groups, and one of the community groups, it's just, I live in like around Somerset, or I live in Somerset County. So there's a group called Somerset Yard Sale. And it's a group literally for if you want to sell anything. They don't just contain it to the yard. It's usually a lot of outdoor stuff, but it's kind of just like, I have something to sell. I am in your local area. Do you want to pick up type of thing? I find it to be a lot more focused in terms of the type of people who are in those groups than just general Marketplace, where you end up getting people like 50 miles away messaging you. So I posted it in there because my sod experience was unreal. I had a line out the wazoo. I mean, I did a quick calculation of how many people responded to my sod post. It was like over 200. But that being said, I was basically offering free sod, which isn't a common thing that you see on Marketplace. So I didn't expect that kind of response here. I'm going to go in detail later around what my posts look like, the specifics of photos, description. I'm actually going to show you an example with permission from someone else who sells in a town that I grew up in about 50 minutes away. Just, things I would tweak with her description. But right now I just want to talk a little bit more about the experience and the logistics. So I posted it on Wednesday night, and by Wednesday, I would say like 3 hours into it, in the evening, I was like, crap, I need to start making bouquets. I need to start harvesting the zinnias outside, and I need to just make some to get some ready, because I already have had requests for pickup on Thursday, and it's a work day, right? So I happen to work from home on Thursdays and Fridays, and I also happen to work a job that is very meeting heavy. And it's not just like meetings where I can multitask. A lot of times I'm either an active contributor or I have to lead a meeting. So luckily my husband's a realtor and he works from home, so he was really able to pick up the slack there. I try to schedule a lot of the bouquet pickups for earlier in the morning before 9 a.m. and after 5 p.m. But ultimately, we had a few in the middle. So to add on top of that, of course, my husband needed to get his car serviced that day. So I woke up, as you saw earlier, at 5:45 that morning, made a few bouquets that really did last through the morning. Thursday, we cleared 20 bouquets. Friday, which was yesterday, we cleared 21 bouquets. And this morning, it is almost noon right now, we've cleared 5 bouquets. So we're at 46 bouquets right now. I have enough for probably a total of 55, so 8 more bouquets, and we've got pickups coming later today and tomorrow, but I'm basically gonna call it quits. Now, the reason why I said I wouldn't necessarily leap at this in the future, like I'm not gonna do this every other week, is because of the logistics. Now, when people say that they do pickup on their farm and they do it well, it's because they have an infrastructure in place and their farm or house is set up in a way that makes pickup easy. One of the constraints for us is we have a very long, narrow driveway. It's very hard for multiple people to come at the same time. We've had instances where a couple of people showed up and, we try to avoid driving on the grass because my husband's very OCD about that. But, I also just don't want people feeling uncomfortable and cramped, right? So I'm trying to spread out the pickup times so ultimately, it doesn't necessarily happen. The other thing with pickup is myself and my husband are the only people in this house. It is a residential address. Some people hire people to, wait out there for pickups, and some other people have very specific time slots for pickup. We were relatively flexible with the pickup times just because I wasn't sure how much interest I was going to get, right? So in the beginning, I said, okay, we're pretty flexible on Thursday, come whenever. So I kind of created my own problem here because people will give you a rough timing of when they're going to come, but sometimes they're late by a couple of minutes. So you're kind of just there waiting for them. And even if they are on time, if you got to pick up at like 9:30, 10, 1, those are 3 very distinct times where you need to stop what you're doing, meet them at the door, greet them, give them the flowers. That exchange takes a few minutes. And not only does it add up, it really disrupts whatever you're doing. So it's hard for you to focus on one thing as a whole. So that was one part of the logistics, which was just the ability to organize and manage the pickups. I got to a point where very quickly on Wednesday night, I needed an Excel spreadsheet. I needed a spreadsheet to tell me who was interested, how many bouquets they were interested in picking up, and then when they were going to pick up, if they paid or not, so forth. So that Excel spreadsheet really helped because whenever someone said, okay, I'm interested, I'm gonna pick up, I immediately went to my Google Sheets and then I entered all that information in so that I could track it. And the reason why this is important is because it goes to point number 2 that I want to make around logistics, which is you've got to be able to balance your supply versus your demand. My supply is not very high in my first year. I don't have a lot of filler right now. Part of it is on me because some of the stuff I tried to germinate just didn't do very well since I didn't do a good job taking care of them from seedling to transplant. But the point is that very quickly, my demand was exceeding my supply. So that meant, how do I get more flowers? And I am a firm believer that if you have a market out there that has high demand, you try your best to meet that demand because you are always trying to figure out what your threshold is, what your cap is in terms of what you're capable of. So this is where knowing that local grower who I typically work with for my markets really came in handy. She had a lot of stems. We were actually just talking the day before about her needing to go out and deadhead. The florist who she normally works with still isn't open right now. So I knew she had a lot of stems and I basically sent out the SOS for her and I ordered a total of 3 buckets, a lot of it being filler and some of it with focals like zinnias. So that's how I was really able to meet that demand. But the Excel spreadsheet was really helpful in making sure that I knew what that balance between supply and demand looked like. Because it's not just saying like I have 20 bouquets and I have 20 people coming. I want them to make sure that they feel like they have the experience to choose from a variety. So ultimately, I'll have at least 3 or 4 bouquets above what the number of people who are picking up. So that's that over there. The third piece around logistics, this one's the most important one. It is time. Now, you heard me talk about just the disruption a pickup causes in whatever you're doing. Take that out of the equation. The time to organize the logistics of pickup is actually astounding in terms of how much it adds up. The time to message people to confirm that they're going to pick up, the time to answer questions that people may have. I mean, my Facebook marketplace messages, like I had a few dozen, and it's just the ability to coordinate and to see, you know, just keep track of everyone is timely and mentally burdensome. So, you know, there's a certain point where I said to my husband, like, what am I doing sitting at a market on Sundays from 10 to 2 p.m.? And then after this experience, I'm like, I would much rather sit at a market because I'm bringing X amount of bouquets. That's the only amount of bouquets I can sell. Everything is constrained in that 10 to 2 p.m. And I know exactly what I am working towards. For something like this, there's a lot more unknown variables and therefore a lot more stress that comes along the way. So the takeaways on the logistics side is that you have to have the confidence that you can balance your supply versus demand. You have to have the ability to be able to organize, pick up, message people, all that stuff, have a system in place. If you're not into spreadsheets, that's fine. Pen and paper is good. But, you know, for me, the Excel is really good because I can filter out people. I even added delivery. So that was another column. I'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. But, you know, it's an organizational feat is what I'm trying to say. And the third piece is just the time that is involved in all this. And you'll get a sense for that when I break it down in the financials. So let's actually talk a little bit about the delivery piece. I put on my post that delivery was offered at a specific price. Very quickly, I realized that a lot of the deliveries were actually going to be a little bit further, or the delivery requests were going to be a little bit further than what I had anticipated. And look, I've never delivered before. I try to stay away from deliveries because obviously price of gas, along with everything else. But there is a case to be made if you have enough interest in a certain area. And I was gonna have to go to downtown Somerville, New Jersey anyway, because that's where the cafe who I work with to exchange, or not really exchange, I just take their used tea leaves for compost and live mulch. I go there basically about once a week. That place is anywhere from 15 to 18 minutes of a drive depending on traffic. So I had to go in that direction anyway, and I recognized that there were a bunch of customers. There were like 7 customers within a 10-minute radius of that area. So for those customers, I said, yes, we deliver. But that delivery is actually in the outer zone of our delivery range. So instead of $3, it's $5. And I'll be honest, even $5 on top of a $15 bouquet, which to me feels like a bit of a stretch because that's a third of the bouquet cost. People were willing to do it or willing to pay for it, but it still didn't necessarily, pay for my time and my gas. It was only because I had 7 people that made it a little bit more worth the effort. And I still don't know if it was like, I think I broke even on the delivery piece after factoring gas and time. But at the end of the day, you know, the delivery only works if you can map out an efficient route. And I am actually going to show you how I did that. So I ended up spending Friday from 1 to 3 p.m. doing delivery. And this a lot was kind of on the fly. I recognized, okay, like I have interest in a group of people who live in this area. Let me think about when it makes sense for me to do delivery. So I would give them a 2-hour time frame. The other thing that I got really lucky with is the fact that, this was later in the week and I happen to work at a job that gives me summer Fridays. So the afternoons, assuming you've completed all your work, you really have flexibility to take the afternoon off. So I was able to offer basically a 1 to 3 p.m. delivery window and then log back on later to check on email if I needed to. So without that, the deliveries could definitely not have happened. So in some ways, I actually preferred the deliveries because I had way more control in terms of just, mapping my route and getting the flowers delivered versus for pickup. There's a bit of uncertainty in terms of when people are going to arrive. So in some ways, it was a little bit more efficient for delivery. And then 2 people even tipped me on top of the delivery. So they effectively paid $25 and they were super, super nice. So it was one of those things where it was ultimately a great experience. Now, do I want to deliver every single Friday? Probably not. But if I do see a scenario where there's a mass interest, I would certainly do it. And some of these people, really stretched their delivery. One person bought 3 bouquets, a few people bought 2 bouquets. So that also made the delivery worth it. The thing that killed me on pickups versus deliveries is that most, for basically half the deliveries, they paid in advance for Venmo. So if they were buying 2 bouquets, they bought 2. If they were buying 1 bouquet, they bought 1. For pickup, when I brought out the bucket of blooms for selection, they originally messaged me saying, I want just 1 bouquet, and they would end up buying 2 a lot of the time. So it really skewed my projection for my supply versus demand. And that is why ultimately I reached out to my grower friend, got 3 buckets, or I think it was 4 buckets worth of flowers from her. And then that evening I texted basically an SOS saying, can I buy more from you the next day? So it was just one of those things where I would never have thought on basically Thursday night to say, or have thought on Wednesday night to say, hey, I need a total of basically 8 buckets from you. I probably would have at most did 5 buckets from her, right? Because I just didn't think the demand was there, and I got proved wrong. So that was a good learning for me. But yeah, overall great experience on the deliveries. It's just you have to be smart about it. And again, in the financials, you'll see how that delivery piece breaks down. All right. So this is the part where I think a lot of people are waiting for and have been asking, because I know many of you have posted on Facebook Marketplace and haven't gotten bites. So I talked earlier about needing to post in a very specific Facebook group. That is step number 1. You want to make sure that you have somewhat of a, more targeted audience. So we've moved enough in the last 6 years. We've actually moved 5 times in the last 6 years. And every single time you move, you obviously are trying to get rid of some stuff on Marketplace. So one of the things that I hate about Marketplace and why I was so reluctant to put my blooms on Marketplace is because you ultimately always get people who message you saying, is this still available? Then they never respond. Or if they respond, then they say, hey, well, you delivered in New York City, which is an hour away, even though my description, I say no delivery. It's just, look, it doesn't matter your age, your race, your gender. On Facebook Marketplace, I always get flaky people, and I always get people who are trying to negotiate. Heck, I feel like there was actually one time when I listed something for free and they basically demanded that I deliver it, right? That's just the type of people who I expect on Marketplace. But what I've noticed is that in these Facebook groups or these local group marketplace forums, it's not like that. The people are a lot less likely to negotiate, and they're a lot more responsive, and they're a lot more responsible in terms of following up on their quote unquote commitment to you in terms of pickup. So this is one of those experiences where I would say 9 out of 10 people who messaged me and I messaged back basically responded with either a yes or a no, which is an unbelievable response rate in my experience working with Facebook Marketplace. So the first tip is you have to post it in the right groups, right? And when you post on Facebook Marketplace, there's actually a prompt that Facebook has for you. It's would you like to post in these following groups? If you say yes, you have to join those groups as a member. So it does take time for you to get accepted into that group. But once you get accepted, it's pretty easy to cross post across multiple groups. So that's the first piece. The second piece I want to get into is, what did my post look like? So I'm putting a photo up here of a snapshot of my post. There are two key things that I want to focus in on. I want to focus on the description and I want to focus on the photos. Let's talk about photos because photos are always easy. For photos, you obviously want something that is eye-catching. So what I like to do is, for my other soap business, I run ads, and instead of paying money to do what they call A/B testing to see which ad creative, so creative is another fancy term for photo or graphic, instead of paying money to test to see which photo is better, I use my Instagram feed, and based off of that feedback from likes and engagement, that's how I tell what's a good photo that resonates with people. So I did the same thing with my flower post. I looked at my b.a.r.e Flower Farm Instagram handle. I looked at all the photos that I posted, including in stories, and I was like, okay, which one got the most amount of likes? Which ones seem to be, the most beautiful that catch attention? And that's what I posted. Now, Erin Benzakein has always said that what changed her business was when she became the face of Floret, meaning she started putting her face into photos, her website, and all that stuff. So I made sure that one photo had my face in it holding a bouquet. There are plenty of shots of people out there holding the stems on the side, showing them in the flower field. I would really encourage you to post one of those kind of photos out there. It goes without saying that your photos need to be crisp. They can't be hazy. They need to be clean, and they need to be shot in just daylight, natural light. So you don't need to buy a fancy kit or anything to shoot your photos. A lot of times it's just making sure that you have what they call diffused light, so not direct sunlight coming in and hitting the flowers, but something that helps diffuse the light. Like, you can see in the back, I have these white shades. Light hitting through that is actually perfect because the shades are the white shade is going to diffuse that light, right? So it's not going to be harsh on the bouquet. One of the things I find very helpful is when I'm outside harvesting, I'll put a bucket in the shade and I'll take a photo, and that shade actually helps diffuse the natural light. That's all you need. Make sure your photos are crisp. So that gets me into the description. Now, if you see in my description over here, I am very specific about what I'm selling. So that's the first thing. People on Marketplace especially don't like uncertainty. And what can that uncertainty look like? That uncertainty can look like the bouquets are variable pricing. Stick with one price. Make it very, very simple. They also want to know, where do I pick up? What can I expect for what I am paying for? So you can see here, I even put stem count in here. And the reason why I did that was because this was Wednesday. I thought I was not going to be able to move stems. I thought I was going to have to call florists. If I had to redo this, I don't know if I would have put stem count in there, because to be honest, most customers don't really pay attention to stem count. But I think that certainly helped. So the second thing that I did outside of specifics was I made it seem like it was value. And I'm not lying. These bouquets are definitely value. And if they didn't feel like they had value, I wouldn't be having a line out the door, right? So I basically said, these are bouquets that I would have sold for $20 for $15. And, I think for most people who saw these blooms, they were like, yeah, these are really pretty. I'm probably not even going to be able to get this quality kind of bloom or, the amount at a grocery store. So maybe I did undervalue it a little bit, but lesson learned here, because remember, I was trying to move stems. Getting some money is better than getting zero money because you completely, overcharge, right? But the one thing that this thing really taught me was I have a local community who actually values local flowers and thinks that $15 for a market bouquet is worth it. That was really great validation. I mean, I did not think that there was that much interest. I thought that there was a lot more education needed around that, but a lot of people who reached out just wanted to support a small business and a local grower. They just didn't want to go to like a Trader Joe's and buy flowers anymore, right? So they were willing to basically pay up for that. So, the 3 key takeaways from a good Facebook post are: 1, specifics on what you're selling and where. So one of the other things that I made sure that I included in here was that I used the adjective, these are specialty blooms. They are specialty blooms, right? Like, there are a lot of things in the bouquet that you are really not going to be able to find at the grocery store. Even like queen lime zinnias are specialty, right? They don't ship very well. My local grower threw in some dahlias in there, some ball dahlias. You're definitely not going to see that in the store, right? So there were definitely a lot of things in each of the bouquets that made them specialty. And look, I'll even argue that some of the pro cut or sunflower varieties that we all grow would be considered specialty. Like, how often do you see a white light sunflower or a white night sunflower at a grocery store? You never see it, right? So market it as specialty flowers or specialty bouquets. The second thing is make it feel like a deal, right? So whether that is showing them, a very, like a full bouquet, or actually putting the number of stems down there. And then the third piece is, of course, good photos. I call that table stakes. If you don't have good photos, no one's going to read the description, right? Because we are all so visual with our social media. So what I want to do is I want to pull up here another Facebook marketplace listing for flowers that I mentioned earlier. This is actually another relatively local grower who found me on YouTube, and she and I have been in touch, and I did get her permission to share this. So look, this is all for constructive feedback, right? Because if you're going to do something wrong, you need to learn from it so that you can do it right. So here's what I would change in this posting. The first piece is, this was definitely a mistake on her end, but the pricing is obviously off, right? It looks like it's $1,234. And that was a mistake because initially she tried $15. It didn't work. So I think she was trying to go for $12, $13, $14. And somehow Facebook, just made it one giant number, right? So that obviously needs to be fixed. She realized it after I pointed it out. The second thing here is from a description perspective. I said people want certainty, right? So I wouldn't say price varies. At probably I wouldn't do this, but if you had to, I would say bouquets are either $15 for non-vases or $20 in a vase, right? But even there's specificity in what is the difference between a $15 bouquet and a $20 bouquet. But yeah, try to keep it to one price to make it easy. The second thing here is that there are some specialty flowers listed by name here, like Lisianthus, even pollenless sunflowers. But my experience tells me that even people who love flowers don't really know much about flowers. Some of them might be able to know what a Lisianthus is, but I'm willing to bet that 95% of them don't know how long it takes for you to grow Lisianthus. They don't realize that you've been babying it for like 6 months. And they certainly don't realize how much those flowers fetch for, to a florist. So, and then I would bet that most people don't realize that sunflowers are pollenless, right? Because the ones that we typically buy for cut flowers are pollenless. So that is kind of like a standard. Instead, I would say they have specialty blooms in here, such as Lisianthus, or if you had like gladiolus or whatever, and you can even put, these are typically flowers that you find at a florist, right? But you have to qualify what some of these flowers are, because flower farmer to flower farmer, we understand, but the consumer does not understand. And I'll give you an example. I had a customer yesterday who bought 3 bouquets from me. And when I arrived, she was like just so ecstatic seeing the bucket. She's like, I love flowers. I buy flowers all the time. Fast forward in the evening, I get a message from her on Facebook, and she goes, I just bought these flowers today and they're dead. And I was like, can you please send a photo to me? She sends me a photo, and she thinks the sunflowers are dead because the sunflowers haven't fully opened up. They're just, like the buds have cracked, but they still need a day or two to really fully open up. And I had to explain to her that these sunflowers are picked and put in the bouquet like this so that you can extend your vase life. The sunflowers need time to open up, and I structure these bouquets in a way that some will die early, but you're gonna get some lasting flowers for hopefully 10 to 14 days if you change your water. And I normally do say this to everyone, but because she said that she loved flowers and she buys them all the time, I was kind of in a rush. I skipped it. So, I made an assumption and it was the wrong assumption, right? So just don't assume that your customer knows these specifics that you and I take for granted, right? So just use the word specialty, and it usually resonates with people because they think they're getting something special, right? Which is true. The other thing on this post here is that the photos, I made this very clear to this person, they need to be better. It's very hazy. I think a part of it is probably just the iPhone lens was dirty. You really want crisp, clean photos, and you don't want to be taking these photos inside, because I think a lot of these photos were actually taken in an office. And look, you can take photos inside. It just depends on how the room is lit. So for example, I actually take a lot of my flower indoor photos in this room over here. But you can see this room gets a lot of light. There's those trapezoid windows up there. There's actually a skylight up there. This room gets so much light that we needed to buy a dark shade for the other skylight at the opposite end to completely block it out, because it is a greenhouse. That's how much light gets in here. So it is actually a perfect room for photos. But most rooms don't get this much light, right? So you don't want to be taking them indoors if you can avoid it. All right, now we're on to what I feel is one of the most important parts of this, which is the financials. How much money did I end up making off of all this? So let's start with top line. Top line is another term for revenue, which is how much money did you bring in based off of how much you sold the bouquets for. So I mentioned earlier, I've sold 46 bouquets right now. Every bouquet was sold at $15. So 46 bouquets, that turns out to $690 at $15 each. I expect to clear 55 total bouquets, so an additional 8 between today and tomorrow, and that will get me to $825. What I haven't added here is the delivery charges that I put on the bouquets for delivery. So the deliveries total were $36 on top of the $15 bouquets that I sold. So some of the delivery fees were $3 because they were a lot closer. Some of them were $5 more when they were in that outer range. There was one where I didn't charge a delivery because I was meeting her at the cafe that I was going to pick up at. So ultimately, for delivery fees, I got $36 out of it. Now I spent, I would say, about 2.5 hours for deliveries. A part of it was because, certain people wanted to chat, which I was happy to do. So I would say that the chatting and all that stuff took an extra 20-30 minutes, but ultimately I could have made that delivery run in 2 hours. So if I value my time, which I consistently value it at $15 an hour, that is $30 for labor, and I haven't even counted gas. So when I do the gas calculations for the mileage, I drove a total of 38 miles. I'm going to show you after how I mapped it out, but 38 miles at 0.585 dollars, so 59 cents basically for the IRS standards, gets me to $22.82. So if you add in my time plus the mileage, I really needed to do at least $50 of fees. So it didn't happen, but that's okay. I got compensated. I feel still pretty adequately for the delivery piece. And look, I totally get it. Like, you're selling a $15 bouquet. There's no way someone's going to pay above $5 for that, right? So it is what it is. But so that's a top line piece. Now let's talk about some of the major costs. I said earlier that I did not have enough inventory for 55 bouquets, and I wanted to make sure that since I had demand, that I was trying to maximize figuring out how much of that demand I could handle. I ended up buying $315 worth of flowers from the local grower. And I will say that in some ways she gave me more then $45 worth for a bucket, because I asked for zinnias in a bucket, and she always throws in some premium stuff like dahlias or some gladiolus that were coming in. And then she also gave me a few buckets of just pure filler. I mean, there is one bucket of just mountain mint, which was like the most gorgeous and, how do you say, filling filler ever. I think mountain mint and lambada, which is bee balm, are the most underrated fillers. But to have mountain mint in that quantity that you need for 55 bouquets, you really need to have it as like an established perennial. And as a first year flower farmer, that wasn't happening for me. It's probably not even gonna happen the second or third year, right? So, but I'm willing to pay for it because it really helps bulk up my bouquets. So that's $315 there. Labor. This one was a tough one to calculate because I am just thinking about all of the fragmented moments that I spent doing this. And I estimate that to be about 10 hours total. So I'm factoring there 2 hours for delivery, 1 hour for going back and forth to pick up the stems from the local grower. We actually met kind of midpoint, but we had to meet twice. So she did charge me for that, which I made her charge me for it. It was honestly a nominal fee of $5, but it's still better than none, right? So 2 times for that was $10 that is embedded into that $315 that I talked about earlier. But at the end of the day, I would say that I spent an aggregate of 7 hours, not only just making the bouquets probably took a good 4 or 5 hours to make, but the logistics of managing everything. When I say managing everything, messaging people, right? Making that Excel sheet, mapping my route, that all took an extra like 2 hours. So let's call it 10 hours. At $15 per hour, we're at $150 for labor. So you can see that this is starting to go down now in terms of profitability. The mileage for inventory, that was, around $12 just because we had to do it back and forth. So again, at that standard calculation of 0.585 per mile per IRS rules. I already talked about mileage for delivery at $22.82. And then Venmo fees. Most people paid in cash, but some people paid in Venmo, which is completely fine. Venmo is actually better than credit cards because they only charge you a 1.9% transaction fee plus 10 cents for every single transaction. So that totaled is $6.16. Assuming that I do clear all of those bouquets, right? So we're talking about 55 bouquets. I get the pickup and everything. I basically made a profit of $361. Now that does include $10 of tip that I got from 2 people who I delivered to. And $361 is pretty good for this 2.5 day, we'll call it extravaganza. That being said, I would rather make $361 in profit sitting at a market on a Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with setup, with teardown, and with a few hours the day before or 2 days before making bouquets, because that is all concentrated in a certain time frame. If I'm stressed, it is stressed within that time frame. The stress for this was basically like a 3 full day affair because you're constantly wondering when is XYZ coming to pick up. Someone saying that they're going to come, but they haven't come yet. Do I have enough bouquets, right? So look, it's not money to sneeze at, but the question is it the best way of making money? And I'm going to say no in my case because I have a market. It might be different for you because you're not in a farmer's market or you're not moving stems at all, right? So if you are in that situation, I would definitely try out what I just said today. But I would just be very mindful about if things actually do blow up, you have the courage to say no. And I turned away plenty of business. I actually started getting inquiries for weddings, for showers, employee gifts. There's actually someone who was like, if I buy 10 bouquets from you, can you do it for $13? And I was like, I can do 10 bouquets for $15 worth of bouquets at $13. But we ultimately didn't go through with it because it was 10 bouquets that she needed in less than 24 hours, right? I turned down all of the wedding, the bridal stuff because I said no to events earlier in the year, and I'm sticking with that. Just the level of stress that I don't need in my life. And, I honestly don't have the blooms to support that right now. So like all this to say, you're probably going to get some business where you are going to have to turn away. You can't say yes to everything. And, you might even disappoint if you try to say yes to everything. So if you do this, things blow up, make sure you have a backup and plan in terms of where you can source more blooms or more help for pickup for bouquet making from a labor perspective. Or, just say I have 20 bouquets total. This is it, first come, first serve type of thing, right? But that's the type of specificity that you need to put in that post. And the good thing about putting something like that in your post is that it creates something called scarcity, which is, okay, there's only 20 of them in here. I see that this post has like 50 comments, it has like 100 likes, like, is it still available? If it is, like, I got to be on it to get it, right? So that stuff I feel, can actually play to your advantage at certain times. If you stay till the end, I hope this video was helpful. If you do implement this, I am very curious to hear how it works for you. So please do leave that in the comments below. And hopefully I will see you next time with a video on how I did on the market that is 2 weeks away from this weekend.